The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had witnessed the birth and death of empires, the signing of peace treaties, and the fragile dance of diplomacy between species that barely tolerated one another. It was a place where civilizations argued, debated, and compromised, where war was something discussed from a comfortable distance. But today there was only silence. At the center of the vast chamber, standing alone, was a human. General Elias Grant, Supreme Commander of the United Terran Forces, stared down the galaxy's most powerful rulers. He was not here to debate. The weight of the moment. The chamber was massive, built to accommodate over 100 species. Each representative sat in their respective seats, suspended on hovering platforms above the central speaking floor. The hall was grand, ornate, with massive banners draped from the ceiling, each one representing a ruling power within the Galactic Council. The air buzzed with tension. Some species had already begun whispering amongst themselves in their native tongues, low clicks, guttural growls, sibilant murmurs. The council chamber had never been this quiet. At the head of the assembly sat Chancellor Velthar of the Zorvani Empire, his iridescent exoskeleton glinting under the artificial lighting. He was composed, but his mandibles twitched, a subtle sign of nervousness. Next to him, High Arbiter Kizol of the Dylari Dominion, a towering reptilian being with 4 golden eyes, watched the human intently. Every council member present had the same question in their mind. What does humanity want? And why, after years of silence, had they come now? The human General Grant was stone-faced. His uniform was pristine, yet worn, a warrior's attire, not the polished ceremonial garb the council leaders draped themselves in. A single scar ran down his jawline, a reminder of a battle none of them knew about. The council had seen many human diplomats before, always careful, always cautious. Humanity had spent decades trying to integrate into the larger galactic community, navigating the endless bureaucracy, proving their worth in trade and exploration. But this man, this was not a diplomat, this was a soldier, and that terrified them. Velthar cleared his throat, his mandibles clicking sharply. General Grant, you stand before the council demanding an audience. The matter regarding the Terran colony 04 incident has already been reviewed and settled. We deeply regret the loss of life. Grant's voice cut through the air like a blade. Regret. The chamber stilled. Velthar hesitated but continued, maintaining his political composure. Yes. The council has determined that the Zalvari bombardment of your colony was a tragic misunderstanding. We have extended compensation, and in return we expect... Grant stepped forward. His steel-gray eyes locked onto Velthar. You think this is about compensation? Velthar's mandibles twitched again. General, I understand your grief, but you must understand that war is complex. Accidents happen. We cannot allow... You attacked our home. The word slammed into the chamber like a physical force. The council froze. Grant's voice was calm, but it carried something deadly beneath the surface. Velthar shifted, choosing his words carefully. General, I assure you, the council has always sought to maintain peace. The attack was not an act of aggression against humanity, merely an unfortunate event in the ongoing conflict between the Zalvari Dominion and the Drathan hegemony. Humanity was collateral damage. Silence. Then Grant exhaled slowly, and he smiled. It was not kind, not humorous. It was the kind of smile that predators made before they struck. Collateral damage. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Then he pressed a button on his wrist console. A holographic projection erupted into the air above them, and the great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent once more. The horror of Terran Colony 04. The recording was grainy, but the images were unmistakable. A Terran city, thriving, full of life, before the sky turned to fire. The Zalvari warships, descending from orbit, unleashing their payload. The camera shook as the ground trembled beneath the force of the first impact. Civilians running, screaming, a woman clutching her child, sprinting toward a shelter. Then, impact. The screen blurred in static before clearing again. The mother was gone. All that remained was a crater of smoldering glass. The recording continued. More footage, more horror. A hospital obliterated, a school reduced to rubble, the bodies of children buried beneath collapsed buildings. There was no battle, no warning. It was not a war zone. It was a massacre. The recording stopped. The projection faded. The silence in the council chamber was now absolute. The moment that changed everything. General Grant let the silence hang for a moment longer, letting the weight of the images settle. Then he spoke. This was not an accident. His voice was low, but every syllable carried lethal intent. You call it collateral damage. I call it extermination. Velthar shifted uncomfortably. His exoskeleton plates rippled, a sign of nervousness. General, Grant cut him off. No. His voice was like iron. You don't get to talk anymore. He straightened, his presence commanding the room. For years, humanity played by your rules. We negotiated, we compromised, we trusted. He took a step forward. And when you killed our people, you expected us to bow. Another step. You assumed we would mourn, accept our place, and move on. He stopped. Then, in a voice that sent ice down the spines of everyone present, he said, "You assumed wrong." The air crackled with tension. For the first time in the Council's history, they were afraid. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was no longer a place of control. The holographic images of Terran Colony 04's destruction still flickered in the minds of those who had seen them. Even now, the scorched landscapes, the shattered cities, and the silence of the dead echoed in the chamber. And yet, even faced with undeniable proof, the Council still sought excuses. The lies of the Council Chancellor Velthar recovered first, his voice betraying the unease in his exoskeletal frame. General Grant, I assure you, humanity's losses are regrettable, but the destruction of your colony was an unfortunate mistake in an ongoing conflict that had nothing to do with you. Grant's expression remained unreadable. He didn't blink, didn't react. He just stared. Velthar hesitated. The Zalvari Dominion had been engaged in territorial disputes with the Drathan hegemony. Their strike was meant for Drathan supply lines, but your colony was... He gestured vaguely, caught in the crossfire. Another excuse. A diplomatic evasion. Another lie. Grant's fingers tightened behind his back, the only sign of the rage smoldering beneath his skin. They didn't just attack Terran Colony 04, he said, his voice measured, though the room could feel the storm behind it. They glassed it. Velthar's mandibles twitched. That is an exaggeration. Yes, orbital fire was used, but... They bombarded civilians for 6 straight hours, Grant cut in. No survivors, no warning, no evacuation orders. He leaned forward, his voice lowering. That's not a mistake. That's a message. The council chamber grew colder. The aliens, many of whom had thought this debate would pass, now felt something deep in their bones. Something ancient. Something that told them that the man standing before them was not petitioning for justice. He was delivering judgment. The political game's high arbiter, Kazol of the Delari Dominion, a scaled, four-eyed giant, known for his species' skill in warfare, finally spoke. General Grant, his deep voice rumbled, measured and diplomatic. Humanity is not the first species to lose a colony to an unfortunate event. Wars, especially among great powers, will always have collateral casualties. If we condemned every species that suffered such loss, the council chambers would be empty. Grant slowly turned his head. For a brief second, Kizol felt an unfamiliar sensation. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. Grant took a slow step forward, his boots echoing in the silence. Kizol, how many Dylari colonies have been destroyed by accidents? Kizol frowned. None. Grant nodded. Velthar? Any Zorvani homeworlds ever reduced to ash in someone else's war? Velthar was silent. I see, Grant said, voice sharp as a blade. So, it's only humanity that has to accept genocide as collateral damage. Kizol tensed. We did not say that. Grant's cold smile held no humor. You didn't have to. The evidence of the betrayal. The Council was losing control of the narrative. They had expected anger from humanity, expected frustration, but they had not expected this. Not this unyielding, calculating wrath. They had seen human envoys before. Those men and women had spoken softly, tried to appeal to reason, worked to integrate humanity into galactic society. This was different. This was a man who already knew what came next. Grant turned to his side and gestured to his aide. A new hologram flickered into the air. This one was not a recording of the bombardment itself. No, the Council had already seen those horrors. This was worse. It was a message, a transmission intercepted from the Zalvari High Command. Encrypted military transmission, Zalvari Dominion. Phase 1 completed. The humans have been neutralized, proceeding with secondary expansion into Sol territories. The Council will cover this up, as expected. They won't risk an incident. Humanity will grieve, but they will comply. They always do. Silence. A silence so deep, so profound, it was as if the entire universe held its breath. Velthar's mandibles clicked uncontrollably. Kazol's claws curled into a tight grip on the podium. The Council members exchanged quick, uncertain glances, and then, in the face of undeniable proof, Velthar tried one last time. This. He struggled to keep his voice steady. This message has not been verified. Grant tilted his head. You're stalling, he said. Because you already knew. Velthar flinched. You knew, didn't you? Grant pressed, voice like iron grinding against stone. The Zalvari told you their intentions, and instead of stopping them, you chose to ignore it. Velthar's mandibles clenched, his tone desperate now. We could not risk an escalation. Grant's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of mountains. You let them kill billions of my people, to avoid political inconvenience. The Great Hall had never been this silent before. The Council had ruled over thousands of species. They had dictated the fate of entire civilizations, but for the first time, they felt powerless. And as Grant stared at them, as the burning rage of humanity settled into his bones, the Council realized something far, far worse than mere anger. They had made an enemy of humanity, and now they would have to survive it. The turning point Velthar finally looked away, his voice barely above a whisper. What does humanity want? Grant didn't answer immediately. Instead, he exhaled slowly. A moment of silence, stretched unbearably long. Then he said 2 words. Justice. The Council chambers froze. The aliens present knew what that meant. Not negotiations, not reparations, not diplomacy, justice. Meaning, the Zalvari Dominion would burn. And if the Council stood in the way, so would they. What do you think? Did the Council truly believe they could contain humanity's fury? What happens next? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic HFY sci-fi stories. The Council had made a mistake. A fatal mistake. For 2 years after the destruction of Terran Colony 04, the galaxy had heard nothing from humanity. No threats, no diplomatic protests, no calls for war. At first, the Council had assumed humanity had simply accepted their place, that they had grieved their losses, understood the realities of interstellar warfare, and moved on. But what the galaxy did not know was that humanity was not grieving. They were preparing. The silence before the storm. The first sign came from the Zorvani border stations, monitoring the farthest edges of council space. It was supposed to be a routine day, fleets patrolling established trade lanes, maintaining watch for pirate incursions. Then, it happened. Sensor arrays screamed with alerts. Unidentified objects, thousands of them, emerging from the void. No transmissions, no IFF codes, no diplomatic channels opened. Just a silent tide of warships, advancing in perfect formation. The Zorvani station commander, a veteran of countless skirmishes, stared at the incoming fleet. His mandibles twitched as he examined the readings. Then, his blood ran cold. These were not council ships. They weren't Zalvari warships either. They were human, and they were coming. The Black Armada revealed. In deep space, beyond the fringes of the galactic core, something impossible had been built. A fleet, massive beyond comprehension. The Black Armada. Every species had believed that humanity was still a second-rate power, a minor force, unworthy of serious concern. After all, their fleets had always been small, focused on defense and exploration. But what no one had realized was that humanity had been hiding their true power. For 2 years, Earth and its colonies had stopped talking to the galaxy. Instead, they had forged an armada in the shadows. A fleet built for one purpose: retribution. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons, their hulls dark, built for planetary siege. Stealth cruisers, invisible to conventional senses, equipped with weaponry designed for one-shot kills. Planet-killer warships, carrying ordnance powerful enough to reduce entire continents to molten glass. Each vessel was painted black, devoid of markings, no insignias, no identifiers, only the silent, unrelenting hunger of vengeance. This was not a peacekeeping force. This was humanity's answer to genocide. The first system falls on the fringes of council space, the Zalvari-controlled world of Varnal 6, a major military outpost, was the first to fall. There was no declaration of war, no demands, no negotiations. The Black Armada emerged from hyperspace, their formation precise, predatory. Within minutes, the planetary defense grid was disabled. The orbital stations were shredded. The Zalvari fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, tried to flee. They never stood a chance. The battle lasted 6 minutes. At minute 7, the first planetary strike was launched. The HSS Revenant, humanity's flagship, unleashed its payload, a single kinetic impactor the size of a skyscraper. It pierced the planet's crust, sending shockwaves that cracked the ground like glass. Entire cities collapsed into the burning abyss. Over 8 million Zalvari died in a single strike. The human fleet did not stop. They moved to the next target, and the next. One by one, the outer systems of the Zalvari Dominion fell, and the galaxy began to understand. The Council's panic back in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The chamber was in chaos. "This is impossible," Velthar shouted, his mandibles clicking in fear. "Humanity does not possess this kind of fleet." But they did. And now, the Council was powerless to stop it. High Arbiter Kazol leaned forward, his reptilian eyes narrowing. How did they build this fleet without us knowing?" The question hung in the air. How, indeed? How had humanity, a species the Council believed to be economically and militarily weak, constructed a navy that dwarfed even the mightiest empires? The answer was as simple as it was terrifying. They had been planning for this from the beginning. For decades, humanity had presented itself as a species of diplomats, traders, and explorers. They had played the role of eager newcomers, desperate to join the wider galactic community. But all along, they had been watching, studying, preparing. And when their colony was exterminated, they finally had a reason to unleash what they had built in the shadows. The message from Earth. A priority transmission cut through the Council's panicked arguments. It was coming from Earth itself. The screen flickered, and General Elias Grant appeared once more. His face was calm, cold. "To the members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice devoid of emotion, "we did not seek this war, but you have made it clear that our existence is optional to you." Velthar tried to respond, but Grant spoke over him. "You let the Zalvari annihilate one of our worlds. You let them erase our people, thinking that we would simply grieve and move on, that we would accept it." Grant leaned in. "We are not grieving. We are not moving on." The council members froze as his voice dropped to something dark. "We are erasing the ones who tried to erase us." The screen flickered. A new image appeared. It was Varnal 6, or rather, what used to be Varnal 6. All that remained was a burning wasteland, a planet reduced to ruins and ash. Gasps filled the chamber. Even the war-hardened members of the council stared in disbelief. Velthar visibly recoiled. This is genocide." Grant's expression didn't change. "No. This is justice." The transmission cut, and the galaxy finally understood what it had unleashed. The next move. As the council reeled in shock and horror, the Black Armada continued its campaign. The Zalvari Dominion, once an empire spanning hundreds of star systems, was now losing entire worlds overnight. And the terrifying part? Humanity hadn't even deployed their full strength yet. The war had only just begun. What do you think? Did humanity have the right to strike back? Or had they become something far worse? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic HFY sci-fi stories. Blast off. The Council had underestimated humanity. For millennia, the galactic powers had watched over the stars with arrogance, believing their vast empires were untouchable. And then, when the Zalvari Dominion had laid waste to Terran Colony 04, they believed it was just another isolated incident, an unfortunate skirmish between rival factions, nothing more than collateral damage. The Council had assumed humanity would mourn their losses, plead for mercy, and then quietly accept their place in the grand scheme of the galaxy. After all, the dominant species in the galaxy had never been a threat to anyone, but they had failed to account for one key element: humanity's pride. A false sense of control inside the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The walls were adorned with banners representing great civilizations, the Zorvani, the Zalvari, the Dailari, and others, each species who had reigned as the unquestioned rulers of their corners of the galaxy. They had built alliances through years of negotiation, secured trade routes, and enforced peace, at least on the surface. But today, the Council was divided. The arrogance of the leaders was clear in their expressions. Now that the Zalvari Dominion was in shambles, it seemed the Council had no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. Chancellor Velthar of the Zorvani Empire, once a towering figure of confidence, now sat with his hands clenched on the table before him. His eyes flickered toward Kizol, the High Arbiter of the Dailari Dominion, as though seeking some sort of reassurance. The Zalvari attack on the humans was swept under the rug, buried beneath the weight of thousands of other disputes. But now humanity had thrown that complacency into chaos. Kizol's golden eyes scanned the room, his massive form barely fitting in his seat, his claws tapping rhythmically. He was shaken, not just by the brutality of humanity's response, but by the fact that no one had predicted it. They had all thought of humanity as just another upstart species, weak, inexperienced, and easily manipulated. "Velthar," Kizol rumbled, his voice low, yet sharp with accusation. "This is your doing. Your people unleashed the attack. You caused this chaos." Velthar stiffened, but said nothing, instead focusing his gaze on the holoscreen hovering before them, displaying human warships obliterating the Zalvari worlds one by one. The scene was so brutal that even the most hardened of council members winced. The dawn of reckoning General Elias Grant had made one thing clear. This was not a negotiation. Humanity's response was simple, direct, and unforgiving. There would be no mercy. And now the galaxy was learning that lesson the hard way. The Zalvari Dominion had been humiliated. Their once proud empire, stretched across dozens of systems, had been annihilated in a matter of days. Their capital, Varnal 6, had been reduced to a barren, lifeless rock. It was a blazing, burning reminder to the Council that humanity had the power to wipe out entire species if provoked. The human fleet, the Black Armada, was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The ships were dark, ominous, and relentless, built for destruction and equipped with technology that the Council had no hope of understanding. Stealth cruisers, dreadnoughts, and planet killers moved through space like a storm, leaving nothing in their wake but smoking ruins. Entire Zalvari colonies were reduced to rubble. Cities that once teemed with life were now just ghosts of their former selves. The galaxy had been shocked by the sheer scale and precision of humanity's attack. They had underestimated humans. But now the scales had tipped. As Grant's message echoed across the stars, the Council had been left with no answers. What could they say to a species that had risen from the ashes of their own ignorance and destroyed an empire that had been centuries in the making? The fateful decision. And now, sitting within this grand hall, the Council had to answer one critical question. How would they stop humanity? At first, they had tried the same tactics they had used with every species before: diplomacy, appeasement, and compromise. They had offered compensation for the deaths of millions. They had promised to rebuild. But humanity had made it clear that compensation was not enough. Justice had to be served. Velthar turned to Kiesel again. We must act quickly. Humanity is too strong now. We cannot afford to underestimate them again. The Delari High Arbiter's claws scraped across the table, his gaze darkening. We have underestimated them, Velthar. But it is not just them we should be concerned with. He turned to the representatives from the Rilnath Coalition, a race known for their techno-diplomacy. What of your own fleets? How do you intend to stop the human onslaught? Or have you already chosen to submit? The Rilnath representatives shifted uneasily, unsure of how to respond. The truth was, they had no real defense against the humans. Humanity's sudden shift from peaceful diplomats to ruthless conquerors had caught everyone off guard. What options do we have left? One of the smaller species asked. A Kasari diplomat, his voice quivering. We have no fleet to match them. How do we fight against a force this powerful? A sharp silence fell. Then one voice rose above the rest. Kezol, the High Arbiter, his thoughts now crystal clear. He was fierce. We fight fire with fire. We cannot sit idly by while they erase entire species from existence. Velthar hesitated. But what if they target us next? What if humanity decides they are done with the Council? The question lingered. The answer was unsettling. Humanity had already proven that they were not afraid of facing the galaxy's most powerful forces. They had destroyed the Zalvari, and now they were beginning to set their sights on others. The point of no return, Grant's message still resonated in the minds of every member of the Council. He had made one thing clear. Humanity was no longer weak. The Council could no longer push them aside, and now the galaxy had to face the consequences of their own arrogance. No more treaties, no more compromises. Humanity had drawn a line in the sand, and the rest of the galaxy had to decide whether to stand with them or face obliteration. The greatest empire in the galaxy had fallen in a matter of days, and the rest of the Council's powers could only watch, powerless to stop it. You attacked our home. The words echoed in every corner of the galaxy, and now they would answer for it. What do you think? Was the Council right to underestimate humanity, or have they sealed their own fate? What happens next in the battle for the galaxy? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic HFY sci-fi stories. The Galactic Council had become a place of fear. The previous arrogance had now been replaced with a deep, creeping uncertainty. The leaders of the galaxy, once so sure of their power, now sat, paralyzed by the very thing they had dismissed for so long: humanity. It had been a week since the Black Armada had launched its relentless attack on the Zalvari Dominion, erasing their empire from existence in mere days. The war was not over, but humanity had proven its strength in a way the galaxy had never expected, and now the Council had no idea how to respond. What do you do when a species, a previously insignificant species, had demonstrated such overwhelming power? What do you do when they demand justice? The shattered illusion of control. Inside the Great Hall, the Council was in disarray. Representatives from the Rilnath coalition whispered among themselves, their spindly limbs jittering nervously. The Zalvari, their former allies, had been wiped out, leaving the Council exposed to humanity's wrath. The Dialari Dominion, once the stalwart enforcers of galactic law, were now unsure how to handle the threat posed by the Terran people. High Arbiter Kizol had always been an imposing figure, a titan among the stars, but now he seemed to shrink, his massive form rigid with uncertainty. The thought of facing the human fleet, much less negotiating with them, gnawed at his mind. The stories from the Zalvari fleet, the endless reports of devastation and carnage haunted him. Humanity had not just fought back, they had exterminated without mercy. What do we do now? Velthar's voice was quiet, a stark contrast to his earlier booming presence. The Zovani Chancellor's sharp mandibles clicked together in agitation. Do we surrender? The question seemed to hang in the air, impossible yet enticing. The thought of appeasing humanity felt almost necessary. If they did not, the Council would be next. But even as the question left his mouth, Velthar knew it was a losing proposition. The humiliation of the Zalvari was too fresh, too public. Would surrender be enough to save the rest of them? He doubted it. We cannot, Kizol started, his voice strained. We cannot just let them rule us. We've spent centuries building this empire, and now a single human fleet has made us nothing. His words trembled with rage, and yet fear. There was no easy solution. A brief yet tense silence fell across the room. It felt like the entire galaxy had frozen in time. The decision no one wanted to make in that moment. The chamber's holoscreen flickered to life. It was a standard communication link from Earth, humanity's capital, the birthplace of the Terran Accord. The Council members stared at the projection in silence, their collective gaze heavy with anticipation and dread. No one spoke. Everyone knew what was coming, but no one dared to say it. And then, General Elias Grant appeared. For a brief second, the chamber was silent as the human commander's cold gaze swept over the room. He did not look out of place here, not like a negotiator or diplomat, but a man who had been through hell and back. His eyes, ice blue and unflinching, reflected a depth of rage and loss that no one could understand. His uniform was battle-worn, scratched, dented, a silent testament to human perseverance. Chancellor Velthar, Grant began, his voice steady, almost calm. I assume you're well aware of the consequences of your actions. He didn't need to raise his voice. Each word carried the weight of humanity's fury. Velthar swallowed hard. We regret the loss of your people, General, but there has been no need for this war. His words were hesitant, desperate. The Zorvani had been the architects of the initial bombardment. The attack on Terran Colony 04 was meant to be a strategic strike, a calculated move to further their influence. But humanity's response had shattered their expectations. Grant's eyes never wavered. No need for war? You invaded our world, Velthar. He said the words like a final sentence. You killed our people for nothing. You made the decision to attack our home. And now, you will pay the price. The Council squirmed under his gaze. There was no denying the truth in Grant's words. You destroyed my family, Grant continued, his voice now growing darker. You destroyed my home. And when we demand justice, you pretend it was an accident. You dare to act as if we will just go back to playing by your rules. The flash of realization. For the first time in the meeting, there was an unmistakable shift in the air. A realization dawned. The council members had been blind. They had expected humanity to be nothing more than a minor nuisance, an outlier species that would be easily manipulated. They had underestimated the sheer fury that would emerge when the line was crossed. Humanity was not just a young species. It was a species that had faced impossible odds throughout its history and survived. They had fought wars on Earth, endured mass extinctions, and risen again to conquer. The galaxy had never known such resilience. In that brief, fleeting moment, General Grant had just stripped away the veil that the Council had carefully crafted. The illusion of control had been shattered. Humanity was no longer the weak, naive species they had thought it was. Grant stood, unfazed by the fear in the room. He had been trained to be unyielding, unrelenting. His people had been pushed to the brink, and now it was time to act. The Zalvari thought they could wipe us out. Now look at them. He glanced at the screen, showing the burning wreckage of Zalvari colonies. They thought they were untouchable, just like you. He paused, a final warning. You attacked our home, and now the galaxy will feel the consequences. The moment of truth. The council sat in stunned silence, their minds whirling as they tried to process the unimaginable. The thought of facing a human war machine, a force so relentless, so destructive, was beyond comprehension. How had they let this happen? How had they misjudged humanity so completely? Velthar's voice was barely a whisper, but the fear in it was palpable. What do you want from us? Grant's eyes narrowed. Justice. Justice. Velthar echoed, his voice cracking slightly. How can we? I'll tell you how, Grant said, his gaze sharp. You will stand aside, or you will be destroyed alongside them. His eyes burned with the weight of an empire's wrath, and every member of the council felt it. It was no longer about politics or power. It was about survival. Grant paused, his lips curling into a dark smile. You started this war. Now it's time to end it. What do you think? Do you believe humanity has the right to act this decisively? How would you respond if you were in the council's shoes? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic HFY sci-fi stories. The galaxy had known peace for centuries, but now, as the lights of distant stars flickered in the blackness of space, something far more terrifying than any previous war was about to unfold. Humanity had already shown the galaxy its might, but this was just the beginning. The Black Armada, the silent, ruthless force that had emerged from the ashes of Terran grief, was not finished yet. It had dealt the first blow. Now it would show the galaxy what it meant to pay for their arrogance. The first target, Varnal 6. The Zalvari Dominion, the first to feel the full wrath of the Black Armada, had been obliterated. But the Black Armada's thirst for justice was not quenched by a single victory. Humanity's forces moved with terrifying precision, shifting from system to system with a relentless pursuit of retribution. The fleet was not interested in negotiations or reparations. It had come for total destruction. Varnal 6, the capital of the Zalvari Dominion, was a jewel. Once a thriving metropolis, with vast cities filled with millions, it had been shattered by humanity's wrath. But it wasn't just the Zalvari that now trembled at humanity's feet. Every species that had long enjoyed the safety of their dominance watched in horror as the Black Armada moved closer to their borders, erasing entire worlds without hesitation. Admiral Elias Grant, leading the charge, stood before a holographic map of the galaxy on the bridge of the HSS Revenant. His face, usually hard and calculated, showed the faintest flicker of resolve. He wasn't just punishing the Zalvari anymore. The human fleet had become a tool for galactic reckoning, and no one was safe. The message had been sent. You attack us, we obliterate you. But Grant was not a tyrant. He was a soldier, a commander who had seen the horrors of war and understood that this was not the same. This was the result of years of oppression and betrayal. Humanity had been forced into this position, forced to act. "Target coordinates locked," the communications officer announced. "Varnal 6 ready for final strike, Admiral." Grant turned his gaze toward the screen. No remorse, only justice. Do it. And the first shot was fired. A galactic shockwave. The people of the Zorvani, Dailari, and Rilnath, races that had lived in peaceful dominance for so long, watched in horror as Varnal 6 was reduced to nothing more than a charred husk. The humans' weapons were unimaginable. The technology they wielded had never been seen before, and yet it was now effortlessly destroying everything in its path. As the orbital strike hit, the once proud capital of the Zalvari was shattered into pieces. The shockwave spread through the system, shaking the foundations of surrounding planets, sending ripples of fear across the galaxy. "This is madness," one Zorvani diplomat whispered in disbelief. "We were wrong. Humanity is no longer the peaceful species we once thought." Across the galaxy, representatives from the Galactic Council began to panic. The messages came flooding in. The Zalvari were gone, no fleet to retaliate, no ambassadors to negotiate, just the silent void of space where once there was life. The human fleet continued its advance, taking the rest of the Dominion world by world. They moved like a shadow, appearing without warning, erasing any remnants of the Zalvari from existence. Humanity had set its course. They would not stop until the galaxy recognized the price of betrayal. The silence of the stars. Back on Earth, General Grant watched as the galaxy's most powerful empires scrambled to make sense of the chaos. There were no more words, no more diplomacy, only action. Grant's face was stoic, but his thoughts were full of the faces of the children he had seen in the wreckage of his colony. He hadn't ordered the destruction of the Zalvari to exact revenge on them. It was not about revenge anymore. It was about sending a message to every empire that had ever looked down on humanity. A message that said, "You do not decide our fate." Humanity's fate had been determined by those who had assumed they were weak. Now, it was humanity's turn to decide the future of the galaxy. Grant's voice echoed in the command center. "Prepare for the next target." They didn't need to ask where the next strike would be. The fleet was already moving toward the Zorvani homeworld. The destruction of a legacy. The Zorvani had been arrogant. They had watched the Zalvari fall and thought they could evade the wrath of the Black Armada. They thought their alliances, their years of power, would be enough to shield them from the storm humanity had unleashed. But arrogance came at a price. Grant's voice was cold as the fleet descended upon the Zorvani capital. "Eradicate them." In the blink of an eye, a planet was wiped clean. The Zorvani Empire erased in a single unstoppable wave of destruction. The repercussions across the galaxy. As the Black Armada advanced from system to system, erasing world after world, the galaxy began to realize the true cost of their actions. Humanity was not just another species. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Council, with all their power, was now faced with a dilemma they had never foreseen. An unstoppable force of nature. The other races, the Rilnath Coalition, the Velmari Alliance, the Dailari Dominion, were left with no choice. They could either stand against humanity or try to survive what was coming. The galaxy's delicate balance had been destroyed in a matter of days. The Council had failed to protect those who had once been allies. Now they had to face the consequences. The decision point Admiral Grant stood in the war room of the HSS Revenant, looking at the battle map. His fingers danced over the controls, zooming in on the Galactic Council. His warships were closer than ever, the lines on the map now intersecting with those of the Council's territory. The final move was coming. Justice was within humanity's reach. The galaxy would not forget this lesson. And when the Council realized that humanity would never bend again, they would have to make a decision: stand with humanity, or be destroyed in its wake. Grant's words echoed again, this time not just for the Council, but for the galaxy at large. You attack our home, we consume your stars. What do you think? Can the galaxy stop humanity's wrath, or is it too late? What will the Council do next? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic HFY sci-fi stories. Humanity's storm had passed. The galaxy was now left to pick up the shattered remnants of its former power. The Zalvari were gone. The Zorvani Empire, a once proud civilization, was reduced to nothingness. And the rest of the galactic empires, those who had once mocked the Terran species, were left to face their own reckoning. The Black Armada had made its point. Justice had been delivered. And now, for the first time in centuries, the galactic order was upended. The collapse of the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council, that once powerful body of interstellar diplomacy, sat in a fragile state of ruin. The decision was simple, yet profound. They had been given the choice: stand down, or face the annihilation of their legacy. In their desperation, the Council had offered everything: surrender, reparations, peace treaties. They tried to negotiate, to make amends for the atrocities that had been committed, but it was too late. The damage was done. Humanity had seen the truth. The Council had chosen to ignore their people, to favor their empires over the lives of those they deemed unworthy. Now justice had come in the form of a relentless vengeance, and the Council had no one left to turn to for help. The surviving members of the Council, their faces grim, gathered together for what was to be their final session. The remnants of the Council no longer had the power they once wielded, not in the face of the human machine of war that now stood between them and any hope of a future. How do we explain this to the people? Velthar, the last surviving member of the Zorvani Empire, asked, his voice cracking. The human forces, they've taken everything. He turned his gaze to Kazol, his eyes empty of hope. We were supposed to be the peacekeepers, Kazol. We promised them peace, and now we have nothing. Kazol too had seen his empire crumble. The Dylari Dominion, once feared across the stars, had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. He had watched the humbling defeat of his people, and now he understood. Humanity was not a species to be dismissed any longer. They had proven that they were the future, and the rest of the galaxy would either adapt or perish. We failed, Kazol said, his voice heavy with the weight of a lost empire. The humans didn't attack our home. We attacked theirs, and now we pay the price. He paused, the regret hanging thick in the air. But what are we to do? How do we survive this? The answer, as it turned out, was not in their hands. The human response. General Elias Grant had made his mark on the galaxy, and now he would shape its future. Humanity had set a new standard of power, one that no empire, no matter how vast, could hope to oppose. In the aftermath of the destruction, the Council's remaining leaders had been left to fend for themselves, unable to make the decisions that once shaped the entire galaxy. The Black Armada had already begun the process of re-establishing human dominance, but this time it would not be through conquest. It would be through influence. Humanity would no longer sit at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy. They would build a new order, one where their voice would no longer be ignored. The final blow was struck when Grant's transmission reached the far corners of the galaxy. On the holographic screen, General Grant's face was as steady as ever, yet his words carried the weight of centuries of human perseverance. To the people of the galaxy, he began, his voice calm, but with an undeniable edge. The time of suffering has ended. You may have believed you could ignore us. You may have thought we were weak, but the cost of your arrogance is more than you can bear. Grant's gaze locked onto the camera. Humanity's future is no longer at your mercy. We will lead now." His words echoed across every system, every ship, every settlement. Humans everywhere heard the message, but so did the rest of the galaxy. They would be forced to accept humanity's place among the stars, and those who had made the mistake of underestimating them would be reminded of that mistake every day. The birth of the Terran Accord. Humanity's victory was not in subjugation. It was not in the crushing of empires. It was in the creation of something greater. The Terran Accord would rise from the ashes of the old order. It was a union of species, not forced through war, but forged through the shared pain of what had been lost, and the mutual understanding that coexistence was now necessary. Humanity, led by Grant, began to reshape the galaxy, offering protection to those who had been wronged by the Council, forging alliances with species who were willing to work with them. The old empires, broken and weary, had no choice but to join this new order, where all voices would be heard. Humanity was no longer a passive participant. They were now leaders in a new era. A new era of unity, a new era of power. Humanity had taken their place at the helm, not just as conquerors, but as guides for the future of the stars. The legacy. What humanity left behind was not a path of destruction, but a legacy of resilience. The galaxy, now watching in awe, realized that it was no longer business as usual. Humanity had proven that it would never back down. And now, it had the power to shape the future of every world. As General Grant stood before the unified forces of the Terran Accord, he looked out across the stars, the same stars his people had once looked at in fear. Now, those stars belonged to them. "What happens next?" one of the officers asked, looking to Grant with awe. Grant's gaze remained steadfast, the weight of history upon him. "We rebuild, we lead, and we make sure that no one ever forgets the price of attacking our home." What do you think? Do you think the galaxy will accept humanity's leadership, or will there be further challenges ahead? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic HFY sci-fi stories.